yours.
That's big time.
Minus 15.
Respect all, fear none.
Oh, did he belt that one?
Intensity is not a perfume.
It was a no-doubter.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
We are up in the bird's nest here at Oriole Park at Camden Yards. I'm Brendan Mortensen alongside Annie Claff. We are a day early, 2 hours late, and I am injured are the three things that have happened so far on this podcast. If you were following along with us live on YouTube and Facebook, you'll see that I have this monstrosity on my hand. I will say, this is overkill. So what happened was that I can't be trusted with kitchen knives, and we'll leave it at that. And I took a nice little slice out of my thumb, and here we are. This is about the second time this has happened to me in the last 6 months. It's becoming an epidemic. It's ridiculous. However, this is absurd.
You look like you're trying to twin with Colton Cowser right now.
I don't get why all of this was necessary. I can't wait to get rid of all of it. This is not why we are a day early and 2 hours late. I'm the only reason why we're 2 hours late. But I think, was it your fault that we're a day early?
It's my fault we're a day early.
All right. So not all of the blame is on me and my recklessness with kitchen knives.
But if we do lose Brendan midway through this podcast, it's because he has not eaten anything and he's lost a lot of blood this morning.
It was quite the scene in the affectionately referred to media frat house. It was an ordeal this morning. So, no breakfast or lunch for Brendan and a lot of blood loss. So, we'll see if I can stay upright, can stay talking during this podcast. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to fight through adversity for a good podcast episode. And that kind of adds a little bit of an excitement.
And for your Volo basketball playoff.
That's true. That I am really going to need to step up for. I'm going to be a game time decision, I think. But, it adds a little element of fun
on the line
for the podcast. If you're following along with us live, maybe I pass out half an hour through.
Right.
It's exciting. You never know what's going to happen here on the Bird's Nest. That's why you keep tuning in.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Andy, we were talking about this before the podcast, and before we get into
baseball.
Orioles injury updates and some positive signs that we have seen from the O's over the last week or so and some reasons to believe they may have a bounce back May, we posed an interesting question that I want to open up here. And it was the one food item that you want to like but just don't. And my answer is a BLT.
Yeah,
because I'm not a big sliced tomato guy.
Yeah, I mean, tomatoes are interesting for me because I like them on BLTs.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it. Like
I feel like they're so much the focal
otherwise
point
I like
of
cooked
BLT.
tomatoes and like roasted tomatoes. But like if
Sure.
there's a cherry tomato in a salad, I will not eat the tomatoes in the salad.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
I think I'm kind of with you on that spectrum where I can do a lot of cooked tomatoes.
Right.
But like a BLT, that is a pronounced tomato. That is right there.
But I have overcome a lot of them in the last few years. Like I really wanted to like pickles, and now I like pickles.
I can't believe there was a time that you didn't. That's insane.
No, I grew up like my entire childhood giving my pickles that came with the sandwich to my brothers or my dad or my mom.
Wow.
And now I like pickles, so there's mine.
That's a win.
I got to come up with another one.
Okay.
Another food item.
Well, we'll be anxiously awaiting that answer. It's going to come to you randomly 25
and this
minutes in.
conversation happened because we were talking about how hungry we were and how Brendan was going to pass out.
That's correct. And it all comes full circle.
We've completed the Brendan and the Bird's Nest podcast hosts injury updates, but we have not yet gotten to the Orioles one.
That's true. We probably should get to Orioles injury updates after my injury update. As I mentioned, today we're going to try to find some positives from the last week. I mean, the Orioles took a series from the Yankees. They were close to taking a series against the Royals. They have an easier schedule coming up. There's a lot of things that you can look at as reasons why the Orioles might be at least on the right track moving forward for the rest of the month. And some of them have to do with some of these injury updates, which we will start with. On Sunday, we got two pieces of good news. Zach Eflin and Andrew Kittredge both appearing in a game for High A Aberdeen. Zach Eflin, it was his first rehab appearance, first rehab start. Seems hopeful that he's going to be back as soon as possible. I don't think there is an injury update that could carry more weight than Zach Eflin potentially being back over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and you could say the same with Andrew Kittredge also as like a second degree
Yeah.
passed right below Zach Eflin. So those are two huge pieces of news. I mean, you mentioned that Eflin was hopeful it would only be one start. He did go outright and say one day at a time, really think that and hope that it would just be one rehab start. But that was on Sunday. He said he was feeling really good for the 1.5 to 2 weeks leading up to that. So hopefully we can get an update on how he feels after that last start from Sunday in Aberdeen. Andrew Kittredge, hopefully we can get an update from him as well sooner rather than later. He went 1 inning with 1 earned run and 2 Ks. Obviously those numbers and stats in these rehab assignments aren't really going to hold too much weight and matter. It's more so just to get them back into the swing of things.
Yeah, Zach Eflin goes 4 innings, throws 58 pitches in that start in Aberdeen. So if he only has 1 rehab start, I don't know if he would be all the way ramped back up to go 6 or 7 innings, touching 90, 100 pitches. Maybe his first start back, you see him go 75, 80 pitches. That could, I mean, Zach Eflin's a really efficient pitcher that could still have him work into the 5th or 6th inning, but Zach Eflin very clearly just itching to be back in the big leagues, and he would be a big help for this team. Eflin and Kittredge both making their first rehab assignments with Aberdeen. They are on very different timelines, though, because Eflin had all of spring training. He obviously started the season healthy, had 3 starts at the beginning of the year. Andrew Kittredge did not have that. He had a very, very modified spring training. This is essentially his spring training ramp up. So although both of those guys made their first rehab appearances on Sunday, they are on very different timelines because Kittredge basically still needs a spring training.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of ramp up he is going to get down on the farm.
Yeah, and Kittredge, too, where it seemed throughout at least the start of the season, obviously the Orioles bullpen has been really good up until Sunday, for that matter. But the bullpen has really, really been pulling its weight throughout this season, especially with the amount of work that it's been getting in. And Kittredge just seems like a very, very important piece as well to be getting back. Yes, it'll be a little bit longer, hopefully, than Zach Eflin, or not hopefully, but you know what I mean. With
presumably,
getting Zach Eflin back as soon as possible. It will probably be longer for Andrew Kittredge, but after Sunday, it also does kind of spark that need for some more relief arms, especially in a guy like Kittredge that was supposed to bring elite chase rates and just everything that he was advertised to be, and hopefully you can get him back.
Yeah, he'd be a huge piece to be another high-leverage reliever at the back end of this bullpen, and as you mentioned, it's a bullpen that has been taxed pretty heavily because the starting rotation hasn't worked deeper into games with a lot of consistency. Speaking of the starting rotation, 2 more injury updates. Trevor Rogers is rehabbing in AAA Norfolk. He's made a few starts there. Still looking to get the numbers back a little bit, the velocity up. For somebody like Zach Eflin and Andrew Kittredge, you're not really looking at the numbers. For Trevor Rogers, you might be looking at it a little bit more because Rogers has struggled at the big league level. You would like to see him put up some better numbers in AAA than he currently has. You'd also like to see the velocity tick up a little bit on the fastball. He's sitting 91, 92 as reported by Jacob Calvin-Meyer. So you would like to see Rogers get that velocity back to where it was a few seasons ago if he is going to be a solid contributor in this starting rotation. Chase McDermott, another guy at AAA Norfolk, he is actually off the injured list and was just optioned to AAA Norfolk, so his rehab assignment has technically concluded, but he was just going to be in AAA either way, so it doesn't really matter if you have him on the injured list or just option him to AAA. Having him off the injured list gives you some more flexibility with the 40-man roster since he was on the 15-day injured list and not the 60-day. So that's the reason for making that move there. He was going to be in AAA Norfolk either way. So just taking him off the injured list and getting him ramped back up there, it's really more of a technicality thing and doesn't really change the timeline for McDermott.
Yeah, McDermott started on May 3rd. He went 4 innings pitched with no earned runs. So that was good for him to see that from him, especially like you mentioned with Trevor Rogers, how you said his stats are going to be a little bit more closely followed than Kittredge and Zach Eflin. Obviously, Chase McDermott is not necessarily on the injured list anymore, but his stats are also going to be more closely monitored than those other guys, especially because you have some maneuvering to do maybe in the future with the starting rotation. Kyle Gibson, obviously Charlie Morton was bumped to the bullpen. Cade Povich has been doing really well, but in terms of who you might necessarily bring back up, Brandon Young, where does he fit in? Chase McDermott, those stats are probably going to be a little bit more analyzed as well.
Yeah, I think Chase McDermott, with one appearance for Norfolk. He had one appearance for the now Chesapeake Bay Sox. He's gotten up to 57 pitches, so you still need to see him ramp up a little bit. But I think Chase McDermott, Trevor Rogers, Brandon Young are probably in a competition to be the first call if there's another move made in the starting rotation. Zach Eflin, whenever he comes back, is obviously going to have a spot. But those other three guys, if Kyle Gibson continues to struggle a little bit, if Charlie Morton remains in the bullpen and you go to a six-man rotation, one of those three guys is probably going to be the next call. And I think they are probably in a little bit of competition to be that guy. Speaking of the starting rotation, starters looked better the last go-around. I know it was not an incredibly high bar, given how the season started for the starting rotation. You were just looking for not the worst ERA in baseball, but hey, Kyle Gibson in his last outing, 4 innings, 3 earned, 5 hits, 3 Ks, 1 walk. It's not awesome. It's 4 innings, 3 earned, but it keeps you in the ball game.
It's better than his first start, that's for sure.
It's a lot better than his first start. 3 earned runs keeps you in it. The Orioles obviously had to go to the bullpen for the remaining innings of that game, which isn't ideal, but 3 earned runs is a lot better than 4 home runs in the first inning. Tomoyuki Sugano still did his thing. 6 innings, 2 earned, 4 hits, 4 Ks. Cade Povich, again, not an overwhelmingly great outing. 4 2/3, 3 earned, 3 hits, 2 Ks, 3 walks. That's fine. It's a fine outing. Keeps you in the baseball game. But the big one, Dean Kramer. 7 innings, no earned, 3 hits, 2 Ks, 1 walk. That's really good. So much better than his beginning of the season.
Yeah, and Kramer just goes to show because you knew that his March and April was vastly different from his Mays just over his career, especially in ERA. So it was really, really good and very needed at that point in time for him to go up with a start like that, where you don't allow any runs, you go 7 innings deep, give the bullpen some rest, especially at this time when it was really, really crucial. You mentioned with Sugano, the 2 walks. Right now he's at a 5.1% walk rate, which is obviously still good for MLB numbers. His numbers, it's a little bit different from when he was in Japan. Obviously, that's what he's been known to do, is just not walk anyone.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's focusing on that. I'm sure he's still happy with it, but probably in his mind trying to bring that down as well. But you mentioned the Kyle Gibson one. That one is just, you got to have some sort of consistency, and if it's better than the first start, then that's all you can really ask for. Obviously, you want to ask for a lot more from him.
Yeah, it wasn't going to get worse.
That's true.
Yeah,
I think that's the way that I was trying to phrase it.
It probably wasn't going to get worse.
But yeah, definitely better when you look at the grand scheme of things over the last few weeks.
And that's what they needed, right? A Kyle Gibson, Cade Povich combination of going 8 2/3 innings and 6 earned runs isn't spectacular. It's not what Tomoyuki Sugano has been giving you. It's not what Zach Eflin is more than likely going to give you when he comes back, but you at least stay in the ballgame. And the bullpen has been really good. I know Brian Baker had an uncharacteristic off outing. He's been awesome to start the season. Matt Bowman has been a nice piece as well. He wasn't great against Kansas City. Those kinds of things happen. You will lose ball games occasionally. Even good teams will lose ball games like that, where the starting rotation is fine, not good, not great, and the bullpen gives up a few runs and you lose the game. Okay, you live with losses like that. The ones that are harder to swallow is when you allow 15 runs.
Right.
Those are a little bit harder to manage and to get through. So if the starting rotation can just keep you in games, the lineup on paper is good enough to win you a lot of games. They need to step up as well, and they have been better over the last week or so, and we'll talk about some of the guys who have really been contributing to that, but this is the kind of run through the rotation that you needed. It wasn't spectacular, but it's 8 earned runs total between the 4 of them. That works. That plays. That's going to win you games, and it won you 2 of 3 against the Yankees, and it kept you close against the Royals as well.
Yeah, and we talked about it all last week on our podcast, where the biggest thing right now is the losses were bad losses.
Yeah.
And these just felt a little bit different. Obviously, you don't want to see however many solo home runs that Kansas City hit against the pitching on Sunday, but at the same time, it just, the series itself and the Yankees coming off of that as well, it just felt a lot better. Obviously, you don't want to look at the 15-3 loss as well, but you just, it keep, like you mentioned before, pitching had to keep the O's in the ballgame, and offense had to pull up their end of the bargain too, and it felt it felt ever so slightly better than it had been in April.
Yeah, absolutely. And just steps in the right direction feel really good right now, because if you are looking at the starting rotation as a whole, Tomoyuki Sugano has been really, really good. Cade Povich has been not spectacular, but consistent enough. He only has really one blow-up start on the year. Dean Kramer, you mentioned that, as soon as the calendar flips to May, he looks like a different guy.
Yeah.
He has a career 6.24 ERA in March and April, and that plummets to 3.72 in May. If you got a 3.72 this month from Dean Kramer, you feel really good. So that's 3 guys right there. Kyle Gibson, you are still trying to have him find his footing. He was better the last time out, not spectacular, but Zach Eflin is going to be back soon, and you know what Zach Eflin is going to give you. So even if Kyle Gibson has a question mark, was still working back and trying to find his big league form, that's Eflin and Tomo, who have been really, really good. Kramer and Povich, who have been solid. Like Kramer was good in his last outing, and Povich has been solid overall. It's 4 guys that you feel like you can rely on, which is not something that we said at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, and it definitely is a shift in narrative, especially because you know that the starting pitching right now is still obviously a big struggle. There's no surprise there. There's no doubt about that. But when you get a solid start out of Kramer like we saw in Game 1 against the Royals, it just changes the whole trajectory for what kind of confidence you feel from him. And obviously you're going to want to see consistency from him and hope that he continues his pattern of progressing from month to month over the season. Like you mentioned, it was a 3.72 ERA for the month of May, but before that it was even a 4.10, and that wasn't before his start against the Royals. It was a 4.10 career ERA in the month of May. So just continuing to notch that down like he did in his last start is going to be really crucial for him to be able to maintain higher status on this rotation, and something that the Orioles offense needs to be able to back up a strong starting pitching performance, but also keep it consistent in terms of scoring runs, but also holding off runs early.
Yeah, you just need to get the numbers going back in the right direction.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be an elite top 10 starting rotation in baseball. You need to get it back towards a league average starting rotation, and they have the arms to be able to do that, especially once Zach Eflin comes back. So that is one reason for encouragement as we enter May and are hoping for an Orioles turnaround here. Another big reason, a couple of hitters are going nuts. And the last 15 games, we'll start with Jackson Holliday.
Sure.
Over his last 15, how about a 341 batting average, a 449 on-base percentage, slugging 561 with an OPS over 1,000. Obviously, those numbers are inflated and helped by the multi-homer game against the Royals on Sunday, but you take those numbers anytime you can get it. The batting average has been way better. The approach has been excellent. He's very much making a case to be in the lineup, regardless if it is a left-handed or a right-handed starter on the mound. Jackson Holliday's an everyday guy.
And even earlier in April and going into the season, you saw Holliday as an everyday player and an everyday second baseman, but then you were still kind of in the back of your mind, okay, he's still got to prove himself at the plate and prove himself in terms of consistency, because where he is now comparatively to last season is far different than you could even imagine. So the jump from year 1 to year 2 is really, really impressive, and you hope that he continues down that pattern. And it's also very, very needed right now, because the stars, the faces of this franchise, Holliday, you could say being one of them, leading up to May, were not necessarily doing all that they could and all that they needed to be doing. Gunnar, Adley, obviously you don't have Colton Cowser, Jordan Westberg. These are all guys that struggled with the rest of the clubhouse throughout the months of March and April. And Holliday, it's really, really encouraging to see that he is kind of proving himself further and further along, especially when he's still trying to secure that everyday spot. And same goes for Gunnar as well, because he is another lefty that has been on a heating up streak, if you will. He's on a 9-game hitting streak right now, batting .342, a .390 OPS, slugging .500 and .890 OPS right now, coming off of 2 multi-hit games against the Royals as well. So that's really, really encouraging from Henderson. And like I mentioned earlier on, where he was struggling to find his footing, it's really, really needed right now for him to lead this offense.
Yeah, you have the lineup coming together a little bit, right? Gunnar Henderson, as you mentioned, that 9-game hitting streak, he's hitting .371 over that stretch with an OPS close to 950. Jackson Holliday joining him is huge. Ryan O'Hearn has been consistent all year long. We know Cedric Mullins has been as well, but if we're looking at that, 15-game time frame that we were looking at with Holliday, Ryan O'Hearn's hitting .310 with a .370 on-base percentage, slugging .690 with a .1060 OPS. And I think he's in a similar category for Holliday, where maybe entering the season, the thought wasn't to have him play every day against left-handed starting pitching, against really whoever, but Holliday and O'Hearn are just playing too well to take out of the lineup at this point. And I would be surprised if Brandon Hyde takes them out against left-handed pitching. I understand there are guys in this lineup and on this roster who were brought in to hit lefties, but Jackson Holliday and Ryan O'Hearn are just hitting everything
right.
They don't have awesome numbers against lefties this year, but you can't take bats out of the lineup that are hitting that well, that effectively, and that often.
Right.
Those are just two guys that are too hot to take out at this point.
And same with Cedric Mullins. Like right now, he's not necessarily where he was in the month of April when he was hitting extremely well. Right now, his last 10 games are 195 batting average, but still recording at least one hit in each game against the Reds and the Nats, still trying to get back to where he was a few series ago. But even still, Mullins, O'Hearn, Holliday are all guys that have really done well unexpectedly against left-handed pitchers. And especially in a time right now where the right-handed bats are not necessarily doing what they need to be doing against lefty pitchers, you are really happy that Cedric Mullins is hitting .290 against lefties this season.
Yeah.
And also when Jordan Westberg and Gary Sanchez, Tyler O'Neill are all injured right now. So despite the struggles from the righty bats against lefty pitchers, you are really happy with the way that the lefty bats are doing right now down the lineup.
It's just whoever can do it is going to stay in there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we saw at the beginning of the season with Cedric Mullins, the plan for him wasn't to stay in the lineup every day. Cedric Mullins has struggled throughout his career against left-handed pitching, but Cedric Mullins was just hitting too well to take out. And I think Jackson Holliday and Ryan O'Hearn have worked their way into that category as well. Gunnar Henderson is coming along. Adley Rutschman is still just a frustrating case of all of the metrics are good, and his numbers just still aren't. He's hitting .216. His expected batting average is .283.
Yeah.
He is squaring the ball up. He is in the 98th percentile in squared up percentage, 96th percentile in chase rate, 95th percentile in whiff rate, according to StatCast. Strikeout rate and walk rate are both in the 75th percentile or better. And his expected batting average is in the 81st percentile, with his expected slugging in the 73rd percentile. Those are all really, really encouraging metrics. And it is just kind of astonishing that his counting numbers have not caught up to his advanced numbers and expected stats yet. It is going to happen, but if you are watching Adley Rutschman play baseball on a day-to-day basis and not just box score checking, you know that he is taking good at-bats, and it's just not falling for him.
And he's always been that kind of guy, too, to have a really, really advanced plate approach and really impressive just at reading and mature at the plate. I mean, even right now in the last 10 games, a .378 on-base percentage is still really, really good. He's just not doing what he's made out to be and getting very, very unlucky. And you hear it all the time from coaching staff as well, especially Tommy Joseph, assistant hitting coach, said when he was asked about Adley Rutschman, I think it was last week or even the week before that, where it's really frustrating because I'm not worried in Adley Rutschman. This is what Joseph said, but I'm not worried about him. His metrics are really good. His plate approach is really, really good still. It's just not hitting the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that we've talked about kind of on a more general sense about this team. When you're looking at advanced stats and you're looking at expected numbers, it's hard to continue to do that during a stretch like this,
right?
But you have to. The process is really good for Adley Rutschman. The physical characteristics of how the ball is coming off his bat on an at-bat to at-bat basis, all of that is good. And it's frustrating that he hasn't found it yet, especially while the Orioles are in the midst of the kind of month that they just had. But the process is still there.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to criticize the guy for not having the best numbers when he's doing everything he can. Sometimes that's just baseball. And it's frustrating and it's difficult. Like I said, especially when this team is struggling and Adley Rutschman is the guy. Like, he is the face of this franchise alongside Gunnar Henderson. But you got to stick with the process because the process is good.
There is still a lot of red on his StatCast page. It's not like,
it's really good red.
So I encourage people to look at that. Like you mentioned, it's hard right now to focus on underlying metrics when the results aren't there, but
it's way better than they were in 2024.
Yeah.
The second half of last year, Adley Rutschman legitimately struggled.
Yeah.
I wouldn't classify this as any sort of struggle. It's not falling.
It's just unluck right now.
And that happens sometimes, but assuming that Adley Rutschman can get those actual numbers a little bit closer to where his expected numbers are, Gunnar Henderson continues to hit, Jackson Holliday and Ryan O'Hearn continue to hit, they join Cedric Mullins. All of a sudden, that's 5 guys in the lineup that are hitting really well. Adley Rutschman would make 6. If Tyler O'Neill and Jordan Westberg come back and they are healthy and productive, all of a sudden that makes 8.
Right. And you saw a glimmer, too, from Ryan Mountcastle with his home run against the Yankees. He went 2 for 3 after that with a double against the Royals in Game 1. He's just really got to get going with the struggling team performance that is right now against lefties, and you really need that out of him. But you did see a little bit of a glimmer of hope from Ryan Mountcastle to join that list of guys through the lineup who maybe could be heating up throughout this month of May, especially when, I'm sure we'll mention this towards the end, but when they have a schedule coming up that should allow them to do that.
Yeah, and you mentioned the struggles against lefties. If there's something that you can point to, as the theme here is how can May be better, Tyler O'Neill is going to hopefully be back at some point in May, and he is, in theory, your best hitter against left-handed pitching. I would chalk up his beginning of the season to just a slow start. He didn't get a ton of plate appearances against lefties. The last time we talked to him when he was facing a lefty was when the Orioles had those 2 games in D.C. against lefty Mitchell Parker and lefty Mackenzie Gore. Tyler O'Neill has not hit lefties well this year at all. He has 2 hits. They are both singles. That's not what you signed up for when you brought in Tyler O'Neill to be a middle-of-the-lineup bat who is going to destroy left-handed pitching. He has an OPS close to 900 in his career against lefties. I would imagine if Tyler O'Neill is healthy and he is rounding back into form a little bit, a larger sample size, I'm sure we will find Tyler O'Neill with a lot better numbers against left-handed pitching than he had at the beginning of the season.
And same with Ramon Arias, too, who hits the 10-day injured list with a hamstring strain. We've been saying all the time that this guy is a very underrated player.
Ramon
Reminder. You heard it here first a year ago.
When everybody wanted to DFA Ramon Arias. Exactly. Aren't you glad they didn't do that?
And like we're talking about with Tyler O'Neill, just once you get him back from the injured list, someone who was meant to mash lefties. Ramon Arias, it's a small sample size, but his hitting .333 against lefties this season.
Yep.
So you really got to get him back. Jordan Westberg, that's a no-brainer. Hopefully he can get back to his original form and who he is, especially when it comes to runners in scoring position. But it feels like May is starting to feel a little bit better when you could be getting Zach Eflin back. You have depth pieces in Chase McDermott, Trevor Rogers, bullpen arms like Andrew Kittredge coming back, but also you can't forget about the lineup guys where you are starting to see Gunnar heating up, Jackson Holliday heating up, and also guys like Ramon Arias, Tyler O'Neill coming back hopefully soon from the injured list.
Yeah, with how much turmoil there's been in the starting rotation, I think the Jordan Westberg and Tyler O'Neill 10-day injured list stints and Ramon Arias kind of got swept under the rug.
Right.
Because it was kind of a general great what else would go wrong at this point, and it was just O'Neill and Westy going on the injured list. But you mentioned Jordan Westberg, too. He's going to help against lefties. He is also going to help with runners in scoring position. Like you said, last year he had a 923 OPS with runners in scoring position. He is arguably the best hitter on this team in those moments. He was last year, and you really felt his absence in the second half of the season. So you struggle against lefties? Great. Hopefully Tyler O'Neill comes back healthy and is a big part of how that gets better. You struggle with runners in scoring position? Great. Jordan Westberg comes back and could be a big part of why that gets better. And you mentioned Zach Eflin. He comes back and is going to be a key piece of why the rotation is better. So they join guys that are heating up a little bit. Dean Kramer joins Tomoyuki Sugano and Cade Povich as hopefully guys that you can rely on a little bit more this month in the rotation. Gunnar Henderson, Jackson Holliday, Ryan O'Hearn, Cedric Mullins have been heating up and playing well. Cedric Mullins has been hot all year. I know he's been a little cool lately, but Henderson, Holliday, O'Hearn especially have been on fire lately.
Right.
And then you get some injured guys back too. You can see a path to getting there.
Yeah.
And another reason that you can see a path is because this upcoming schedule is light.
Right.
Yes, the Orioles record does not inspire a ton of confidence as we sit today, and the Orioles are just 13-20 ahead of their series in Minnesota against the Twins. So maybe there's some other teams looking at the Orioles and going, oh, great, they're 13-20. Maybe we can turn around there. But the Orioles on paper are a better team than that. But coming up, they have the Twins, as I mentioned, who are 15-20. After that, they travel to Anaheim to face the Angels, who are 13-20. They get the Twins again after that. Nationals after the Twins. I know you just dropped 2 of 3 against the Nationals, but they are still a sub-500 team. The Brewers are sub-500. The Red Sox sit at 500 right now. The Cardinals are 3 games under, and at the end of the month, you have the 10-24 White Sox. So you do not face a single team this month that is currently, as we stand here Tuesday afternoon, no teams over 500. That's a really good opportunity to turn things around.
Right, and especially when you're going up against the Twins twice and only one division team this month, that helps a lot as well. And the Red Sox, luckily, that's a 4-game series. Hopefully you can have a chance to split that series, if not win. But the Twins should be interesting. Obviously, their pitching looks pretty good right now. They have the 9th best pitching ERA in MLB. Pablo Lopez looks really good. There's a lot of red on his StatCast page.
Yeah.
But you're also not facing any lefties in Minnesota,
Woo!
which is great, especially when you know that the right-handed bats have been struggling on this Orioles team, but also when you know that Holliday, Mullins, Gunnar, O'Hearn have a chance to, so to speak, pop off against the Twins.
So to speak, pop off. Yeah, save the left-handed pitching for when Tyler O'Neill, Jordan Westberg,
Right.
and Ramon Urias are back healthy and in this lineup. But, in terms of the standings, too, there are a bunch of teams that the Orioles face that are in the cellar in their division. I know the Orioles are, too. They're only 5 games back of the Yankees.
Yeah.
You gained some ground in the series where you took 2 of 3 against New York last week. The Yankees are 19-16. I think every team in this division is disappointed with their start. The Yankees are 19-16. That is far below expectations. The Red Sox, as I mentioned, are 500. The Rays and Blue Jays are both 16-18. That's not good for either of them. They had higher expectations than that. I know the Orioles have fallen shorter of their expectations than those other teams, but you are really fortunate that the Yankees are not running away
Right.
with this thing. You are 5 games back of New York. You are in the only division in baseball currently that does not have a 20-game winner. I never thought I would say that the AL East is a good place to be when you
Yeah.
are struggling a little bit, but that's what it is right now. 4 of the 5 teams in the division are 4-6 over their last 10 games. You're not in a terrible spot. This
Yeah.
could be a lot worse if you're the Orioles sitting at 13-20. You could very easily be 10 games back, but you're
Right.
not. Because the Yankees are struggling, the Red Sox are struggling, everybody's struggling.
Right, and it's a really, really good chance, and it's coming at the perfect time to have this schedule to be able to catch up on that record of 13-20. Yes, 13-20 does not sound great, but when you look at that schedule, there are plenty of chances to catch up on those 7 games behind to match 500. The Angels, the Nationals, and the Cardinals are in the same lower echelon for pitching ERA as the Orioles. The Brewers, the Twins, the Angels, and the White Sox all have worse team OPSs than the Orioles. These are beatable teams, especially when you know that the talent on the Orioles is there.
Yep.
And when you know that you could be getting Zach Eflin back, you could be getting Andrew Kittredge back. Maybe that one will be a little bit further down the line.
At some point, yes.
But
Maybe late
Felix Bautista has been doing really well, and there's getting to be a lot more trust in his recovery process and how he appeared twice against the Yankees, getting his 4th and 5th saves. His pitch velocity upticking a lot in those appearances as well. These are just all really good signs. You obviously are not happy with how things have started 2025 in the month of April and March, but May seems to be a lot more of a brighter side, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel a little bit.
Yep, but at the same time, if you're going to do it, you're going to do it now.
Right.
It
It has to be now.
You can't completely lose the season in April. You can't win the season in April. You aren't going to completely take yourself out of it in April. But with 2 bad months back-to-back, you could theoretically take yourself out of it because the Yankees and Red Sox and other teams in the American League are not going to struggle forever.
Right.
This is the time to turn things around. You haven't completely lost the season. Makes me think of the Mets last year, where the Mets entered June 24-33 after they went 9-19 in May. It was a disaster in New York. Then they go 16-8 in June, and you're 1 game under 500. So you're in striking distance. That's all the Orioles need to do. Baltimore sits at 13-20. They've got 27 games in May. You're 1-2 so far, so 24 games remaining in May. If you go, let's see, 17-10 in May. They went 17-9 last year. If you go 17-10 in those 27 games in May, meaning you go 16-8 the rest of the way against a bunch of teams that you should be able to beat, you're 29-28. You're 1 game over 500.
Yeah.
You're right there. You're right back in it. Yeah, you have to have a really good May. They had a really good May last year. You're getting guys back from injury, really important guys like Zach Eflin, Jordan Westberg, and Tyler O'Neill, like we've talked about. I don't think going 16-8 in May is completely out of the question for how good this team is on paper. I know they have not performed like that thus far, and maybe 16-8 sounds crazy given the start to the season that they've had. But talent-wise, they have it. They have the ability to do that, and they have the ability to beat up on some teams that have struggled to start the year just like they have.
Yeah, 100%. And it also, when you look at it and you zoom out, it is only May, but this is the time to be able to catch up.
Yeah.
And you also, like you mentioned, cannot let the Yankees trail further and further in front of you, or not trail, go further and further in front of you.
Yeah, they can't
and
build
the Red
more
Sox,
of a
exactly. You
gap.
can't let them get further ahead. So right now is going to be arguably one of the most important months of the season.
Yeah, and it's going to be really interesting for me to see how Brandon Hyde manages this team in May, because do you manage like it's September?
Yeah.
You need to have a really good May. This is crunch time. It's not normally crunch time this early on in the season, but it is crunch time for the Orioles right now. I know they've talked a lot about the fact that they are not panicking and they are staying true to the process and all that stuff. All that is fine and good, but you got to win baseball games. And I am curious to see what Hyde does with lineup construction, right? We talked about Ryan O'Hearn and Jackson Holliday. Do they stay in the lineup against lefties consistently because they are just hitting so well? I know you want to keep guys fresh that are typically bench pieces. Does it matter at this point when you just need to win baseball games? The same thing can be said for the bullpen. I mean, you've got to manage the bullpen like it's September at this point. Do you bring in guys in the 5th and 6th inning if it's a high leverage situation that you would normally have them in the 8th? And normally you wouldn't do that in May. But this is where you are. You're 7 games under 500. The division is far from out of reach. You're only 5 games back. The playoffs are far from out of reach. But you got to do it now, because he can't have the 2 months like this back-to-back.
Right, and yes, it's unfortunate that the Orioles are even in this position where you probably looked at the schedule in May, in early parts of the season or in the offseason, and been like, okay, that's going to be a really great chance to catch up on and give some guys, some important everyday players, maybe some rest, or maybe not have to use Felix if he's coming back from recovery. But like you mentioned, you might have to manage it like it is crunch time, and like every single game is a must-win game, which they are.
Yeah.
But it is hard to grasp when you could have looked at this slate of games and been like, okay, these are easy must-win games where you don't have to put as much high leverage and energy into it. But unfortunately, it is the case that it is going to have to be that way. And you are going to need guys like Gunnar and Adley and Holiday to continue to step up the way that they have been. Adley more so than the others because he hasn't necessarily proved himself yet with the results. But right now is more than certainly the time to have to prove themselves.
Yeah, it's got to happen now. And this month is going to be very telling of who the Orioles are, right? Because we are talking about a schedule filled with sub-500 teams. On paper and talent-wise, Baltimore Orioles are not a sub-500 team.
Right.
So do you separate yourself from the rest of these teams that maybe are sub-500 teams and are playing like the teams that they are? Or Are you the team that has just gotten off to a slow start, but you're a lot better than those teams? I think it's option B, and I think the Orioles have the chance to show that this month. They just got to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that'll just about do it
Yeah.
for this week's edition of the Bird's Nest. I think next week we will be back at the same time, same day, Wednesdays at 11 a.m. We'll be back to our same bat time, same bat channel. But thank you for following along with us live here on our Facebook and YouTube channels. I know it was a modified schedule today, but like I said, we will be back next week. Or you can catch us after the fact on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us here on The Bird's Nest. Big thank you to Bobby Blanco behind the scenes for producing this one. For Andy Claff, I am Brendan Mortensen, and we'll catch you next time.